go. That's very good. Right. Um, Football covers a lot of things, as does love. There we go. So we've been looking through the book of Esther, and we've been looking at Esther has thrown banquets for people, and we've then found that Haman, who wanted to do away with the Jewish people, um, ends up having to honor Mordecai, and and so he ended up having to lead Mordecai through the streets. So we did chapter 6 fairly well. So we're going to go on to feast number 2 today, Esther 7. And I think if we go to verse 6 first, and then as we discuss that, we'll go further. So I'd like someone to read and someone to pray. Okay, thanks, Leslie, with the lattice. Yeah, thanks, Mandy. Leslie, you've got a lovely lattice over your face from the window. It looks great. There we go. There we go. Right, if you'd like to pray, Mandy, I'm sure Leslie will be back. I think she's adjusting curtains, judging by the shadows. Yeah, go for it. Amen. Thanks, Mandy. Right, Leslie, your lattice is now sorted. I, you- we're not bothered by the lattice. It's just, yeah, we don't want any strange suntans or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. Was it a military tattoo, or was that next week? Yeah. Uh, no. Chapter 7, 1 to 6. This is the second feast Esther's set up for the king, and yeah, there we go. You've already gone too far, but that's fine, Leslie. It's hard to hold back on a chapter like this. So this is now. I mean, you just imagine. Haman's just left his house to go to this banquet. All his friends and advisors have just said to him, "Think you're done for, mate." You've had to lead Mordecai out in this procession. I think the signs are not good for you. You've begun to fall already. And then he arrives to the feast and falls pretty quickly. And so, with all the feasting, you can imagine the king having a real laugh with Haman like they did before, and all this kind of thing going on. And then all of a sudden, come on, Esther, what is it? This is the second feast you've set up. What is it you've got? And she cuts straight to the chase. My own life is in danger, and actually that of my people, and her identification with her people, and her identification and saying, I am one of the Jews, where she could have maybe kept her head down and kept her head. She was willing to put her head on the block with the rest of her people. And that is gutsy stuff. And so her patience in this, the way she's approached it, the strategy, the character shown, and here you have, in front of the king who could kill anyone he wanted whenever he wanted, she puts her head on the block and says, if you could save my life, that would be all I ask. And the king, who's been really impressed with her, is about to go, nee, who would do such a thing? And it's actually him, as well as Haman, that have signed this off. Do what you want, Haman. Yeah, 10,000 talents into my bank. Yeah. and then all of a sudden, who has done this? And Esther says it's Haman. So the king suddenly thinks, oh, right, okay. He goes into the garden distraught. So I think that's really powerful stuff. We'll open it up and see what people have to say. Go for it, Carolyn. Good morning to you. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's welcome to the wonderful world of politics. Yeah, the silent sneeze. Yeah, no, but I think life's so cheap in the Persian courts. Some of these decisions and their ramifications. Oh yeah, make a decision on that. Make a decision on this. It's not always well thought through by the people at the top. I think he makes so many decisions every day he can't remember some of the decisions. He has to have them read back to him at night when he's trying to sleep. There's some of these things here that I think it's the quantity. If you imagine a huge empire having to deal with the quantity of decision making and things, there's lots of decisions he's passed. And he'll go, oh no, we're not going to do that. Oh, wait a minute, I signed it off, did I? Oh, right, okay then. I think there's lots of those conversations that happen between his courtiers and himself, and a lot of those people are probably quite manipulative with all of that. So you just don't know what's going on. I think the king would never want to harm Esther, but actually he's made a decision that does. He's agreed with Haman, and so that is about to be all undone. So thanks for that, Carolyn. I don't know. I'm not one to make excuses for this king, but I think in some ways, I think sometimes the connection between decisions and their ramifications is not always made by people at the top, and that is as far as I'll go with that. Leslie. And from such a great height too. Um, Thanks, Leslie. Anyone else want to? Sorry, Carolyn. Yeah. But we're working through it step by step, so it's good fun. Right, David. David. Mhm. 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 Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, David. Mandy, and then Carolyn. Hmm. Well, thanks, Mandy. I think one the wonderful thing is all our prayers are yes and amen in Jesus, and we pray in His name, which is in line with His character, His personality, His mission, all that He is. And I think so I think what you're saying is, if it pleases you, if it's in line with what your kingdom is coming, let's go for it, God. And let's thanks for involving me in praying. I think it's a very powerful thing. Um, so thanks for that. And I think the interesting thing is, it's because I'm going to be killed, King. I'm up for this. And actually, I just realised I've got to change the setting here. I just got texted by someone. There we go. It's actually, I don't mind being made a slave, and actually, in some ways, saying actually she came from slavery. If you think about it, they were carried into captivity, and so she'd come from that background. That doesn't bother me, but getting killed and all our people getting killed, that does bother me more. Is a bit of a statement there. And maybe she's appealing for the king. She's thought through this strategy very carefully, and her approach to the king gives him some options. Is she subtly hinting, if you could spare the Jewish people and just make them slaves, that might be a way out of your scheme, which leaves you with face? Is she leading from that position and bringing a little something in there to try and save the people by dropping a suggestion into a well-wined king? I don't know. There might be something she's dropping in there as well, which might be subtle. It might not be that she doesn't mind that, but it might actually be she's trying to make some suggestions here very subtly, where she hasn't got any room to do so. So I'll throw that open. I've got Carolyn's hand up, and then Leslie's, and then David's.
Do you think that they would have actually killed Esther? Do you think that someone would have actually gone in and killed her? And the other thing is, David, I think that I agree with you when it comes to, I can't remember what point he was making about the communion with your multi-denominational thing, but I think it's lovely if you're in communion and you've got one person, prostrate on the floor, or one person kneeling, one person just doing what they feel that they want to do. And at the end of the day, it's not looking around at others, is it? It's focusing on the bread and wine for what it means to you as well, personally. I do feel that when you're having to go and do it a certain way, I think it's more out of respect for others. I don't know, because you need to have a certain amount of order. But I think I like that very much what you said. But I just that was my point about that. But I was just wondering who would actually go in. Maybe Haman would go in into Esther. I don't know. Would that actually happen in the palace? I'm not sure.
Well, I think
they'd have an excuse to, wouldn't they?
I think if it's been decreed by the Medes and Persians, kind of a can't be undone kind of law that even the king can't overturn, then I think that's but no one knew Esther was Jewish, and that's the issue. It's a trump card she played. It is almost like no one knows I'm Jewish. But we're sat here having a meal. Haman's been telling all his friends how wonderful the last meal was and how special he is. And then I'm going to play the card here and say this man sat here who's been eating my food has actually been trying to destroy me. That's a blinder, and she's kept it till that moment to do that. I think that's very, very strategic, very, very good, very patient. I mean, how you hold back with the terror, how you hold back with the anger, how you hold back with all the emotion and all that must be going on in someone. facing the death penalty or whose people are facing the death penalty.
Yeah, it's
Gutsy,
incredible.
gutsy stuff. Right,
That is
Leslie,
incredible.
and then David.
Well, I'm just reminded that we are in new covenant times now, and it is as if the scepter, through what Jesus has done, is held out to us all the time. And so we come before God not with the terror or the the worry that maybe Esther had, that she would be killed if she came before the king. And in the Old Testament, of course, they were worried that if they saw the face of God, they would die. So we're in a different time now for us, and God gives us the desires of our hearts. Now, obviously, if I pray for a Ferrari or a cream bun, I'm probably not going to get those things. But trusting that what I'm praying for, and what my heart is after, has come from the heart of God. And that's what we're seeking, really, isn't it? That God would break our hearts for what breaks his, and lead us to pray for the things in the right way. And out of that, out of our declarations based on God's heart, we're likely to have prayer answered. So I think that's great encouragement. So we're not in the same spiritual place that they were then, in Esther in front of the king. The diplomacy she needed with a human king is not quite the same as that we need with our God, who is an all-loving Father figure that we can come before with full assurance.
Yeah, thank you, Leslie. And I think thanks for bringing it into the new covenant for us. David?
Yeah, I'm just... my vision last night of a cream bun has been destroyed, and I shan't believe it. That what I was thinking.
Sorry, I've just got that song going around in my head. Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? But it hasn't happened yet. Go for it, David.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, she's fairly confident. She's got a confidence that actually the king will give her what he's promised, because he's given this. He's told her 3 times now that whatever she wants, he will give her up to half the kingdom. So in I'm looking back to chapter 5 in verse 3 and 6. It's what is your petition? It shall be granted to you. What is your request? Up to half the kingdom, it shall be done. And then again, in this chapter, he says the same. But also, what else was I going to say? When she tackles this, she uses the exact words of Haman, so that Haman can't wriggle out of it and say, I didn't say that. Because he's actually, back in chapter 2, he's talking to them and saying that he wants these people annihilated, and he actually gives money to somebody to do the job, which I think brings in this idea of being sold for slavery. That would be okay, but being sold for destruction is not what Esther's saying. And I think when she's developed this relationship with the king.
Sorry, I'll get it back.
Sorry.
Sorry, we can hear you, Jenny. Yeah.
Okay. When she's developed this relationship with the king, she knows that she's going to get what she's asking for, because the king has given them those words. And relating back to what Leslie was saying, we know what the king has promised us, and we can ask in those promises that with confidence that we will receive what he has promised, because his promises are yes and amen. His gifts are without repentance. So when we pray into what the King has promised us, then we can be confident in receiving it. And Jesus says, "Only believe, and you will receive."
Yeah,
I thought
thanks.
that was a good link.
Yeah.
It only came
Very
to me
good.
very quickly.
Mandy?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just briefly thinking of the contrast here between Esther and Moses, because both were saving the people from a king. Both had a relationship with the king. I think that's often forgotten with Moses, that he was brought up in the palace. And when God called Moses was like, "Oh, you're going to have to give me my whole family around me because I can't do this on my own." And he had a burning bush and everything going. But actually, Esther, she takes a very, very different approach. But she's got a different type of relationship. I think that's the thing. Different type of relationship with the king to what Moses had. It's more intimate. And so she doesn't turn round and say to Mordecai, "I can't do this on my own." She just bides the time and does it. And I think those words, "such a time as this," in this book, and you start contrasting people who bring the children of Israel out of different circumstances. There's no one way to do it except to follow God. There's no method behind it. Just faith and trust that God will do it. And she goes in with the confidence, even though she might die, that Jesus came with the confidence, even though he knew he would die, to save his people. And I think the one common thread through all of it is that it's the right time, with God in control, with the right people in place. There's a spiritual strategy that God orchestrates. So whether you're Moses or Esther or Joshua or Nehemiah going back to Jerusalem or even Paul taking on the new church, there's not anything where you can look back and go, there is one way to do it. The only way is God's way, and that is different every single time, so that we can't become puffed up and proud because we've done things in the way that somebody else did, but God uses everybody according to their own abilities.
Wow. Thanks, Mandy. So are you saying that Esther was even more gutsy here than Moses, because Moses asked for help?
Yeah, but in fairness to Esther, she hadn't just murdered someone, so I could understand why Moses was just a little bit worried.
Okay, thanks, Mandy. I never even thought of that. That's so sharp. Thank you, Mandy. Leslie, and then Carolyn, and then we're going to read on the next bit.
I suppose Moses was brought up by Pharaoh's daughter, so there would have been some sort of relationship, if only that his daughter had taken this baby into the court. But I wasn't going to say that, but she's going to die anyway, according to what Haman has organised with the king. So she's really got nothing to lose. She's going for it. But what I wanted to say was, as we're looking this is the first Old Testament book we've looked at, and it is a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, a soapbox if you like, that we mustn't confuse the Old Testament systems with the New Testament. For me, the Old Testament shows us what we have come out of through Christ, and it is a very different that way of us coming before God now through the blood of Christ. The temple curtain has been torn, so we have complete access to God. And you know, over my years of being a Christian, for many years, people did muddle the Old Testament ideas with the New, and we know that you can't put a new patch on an old sheet. Being a seamstress, I know that. Nor can we put new wine in old skins because they'll burst. So, you know, just to bring that into, Michael, you said that you thanked me for bringing the New Testament into it, the New Covenant. It is quite a major thing that we are in a different place now, and I'm not saying that the Old Testament and the Old Covenants teach us so much about where we've come from and what Christ has done for us, and how wonderful that we can come boldly before God with our prayers and our declarations and our requests.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. I think, the Old Testament, this isn't the first book of the Old Testament we looked at. We've done Nehemiah, and we did the whole book of Psalms. I think so in that we've looked at these things a number of times. I would say there's a lot in the Old Testament that foreshadows what's in the New.
That's right.
And there is also a lot in the Old Testament that foreshadows the end as well. So it goes beyond us as well. And so I just say that just to balance everything out. But that's great. Thanks, Leslie. I've got Carolyn and David.
I seem to have a lot of questions, but I think it's just that. Do you think that the reason why he got so angry, the king, is it because he was angry with Haman because he realised that Haman has betrayed him or been skullduggery towards him? He hasn't been. He's kind of got someone up there that's pretty high up, and then it's just another person that's let's just let him down, and it's massive to let him down. Knowing, I mean, I suppose he didn't know that Esther was a Jewess. The fact that he's got so angry, is it because he's drunk, or is it partly because was it because he doesn't know how to get out of the situation? And she's kind of left him with a. Maybe he actually really cares for Esther, you know. Yeah. So
thanks.
Questioning.
And I think we're about to go there. So what I think we should do is read verse 7 onwards, and finish off this chapter. We've got about 20 minutes to do it. I think we should be able to do that. I'm not right up to the wire today, although we'll be in some of the other days. So let's have a look at. Did you offer to read there, Carolyn? Was that your waving hand?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. So verse 7 onwards.
Right. So. And the king arose in his wrath from the wine drinking and went into the palace garden, but Haman stayed to beg his life from Queen Esther, for he saw that harm was determined against him by the king. And the king returned from the palace garden to the place where they were drinking wine, as Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was. Oops. And the king said, "Will he even assault the queen in my presence, in my own house?" As the word left the mouth of the king, they covered Haman's face. Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs in attendance on the king, said, "Moreover, the gallows that Haman has prepared for Mordecai, whose words saved the king, is standing at Haman's house 50 cubits high." And the king said, "Hang him on that." It's definitely the gallows, isn't it? So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the wrath of the king abated. So he's angry at Haman then, isn't he?
Yeah. I think so, but I think your question is an interesting one. Why did the king go into the garden? And I think that's what you were saying. Was he angry at Haman? And you're saying yes, he was. Well, I think that was one of the emotions going on.
But he was
I
angry.
I think he needed a little wander because he needed his brain to clear a little bit from the wine. But I think also he's been caught out here. He's signed a death warrant for his own queen by giving his signet ring over to Haman. There's a lot of different things in this. So he's then probably thinking, what else is Haman up to? There's a whole load of things could have been going on in that king's head. And eventually when he's pondered a bit and he thinks, right, okay, I'll go back in. And he finds Haman all over the queen's couch. That's the end.
Trying to beg her.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not how the king expressed it. I think, was he going back in to destroy Haman? Was he going to go back in, you're dead, mate? Or was he going back in to say, how did this really happen, or discuss it? I mean, you don't know what he went. Why did he go into the garden? Why did he come back from the garden? But when he came back from the garden, he just saw red. He thought, this guy's dead, done, and move on. You know, and there's gallows. Oh, let's do that then. You know, there's no mucking around, and you know. So I don't know. I'll throw it open. See what people got to say. Why did he go in the garden? Why did he come back? And you know, I think it's, you know.
Mandy
Did Haman think he was in a good position begging the queen? Right, Mandy.
I don't know the answer.
Desperate.
It doesn't say. I have this habit with the Bible. If it doesn't say, I don't need to know. All I know is that he was very angry. But I think it is interesting that certainly that's been brought up through Carolyn's question is that when the king goes back in, Haman is across the couch, and the king sees that he's trying to molest the queen with him in the house. And you take that back to the beginning of Esther, where Vashti wouldn't go into the men's feast because it was inappropriate for her to do so, because there was a possibility in that with all those drunken men there, she could have been molested. My wife, this is my queen, and I'm going to protect her. And that it's taken him a very long time to kind of realise how important queens are to him. But eventually it's like the penny drops, and it does make you wonder if after this at any point he remembers Vashti for any reason and has any thoughts about that. But again, it doesn't say, so we don't know. And I think after all that Esther has gone through, it must have been quite a relief to her to hear her husband actually say, stay away from my wife. I'm going to protect her at all costs. Yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Do you think that they would have dared to do it, although if they were drunk, I don't suppose they'd care, to molest the king's wife? Maybe.
No.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think Haman was an astute guy. He was pretty clever on a lot of things, and he'd got things to this point. He thought he was doing very well. I wouldn't say I'd say he was just begging for his life. He knew I am in deep trouble here.
Yeah, no, I mean,
what is the only way out? So I don't think there was any attempt by Haman to push things further. Right.
No, I mean Vashti with all the men, the drunk men. Maybe they were so drunk that he wouldn't have noticed. The king, you know.
Oh, I think he'd have noticed.
What if someone molested her?
I think in the settings I've been, someone is inappropriate with someone else in those settings, and someone's very drunk, they really overreact hugely sometimes.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's any. I don't think he would. Anyway, we don't know. It's all from silence. I've got Leslie and then David.
And I just wondered whether the king was starting to have a moment of clarity when he went into the garden, realizing actually what he had allowed himself to be pulled into by Haman. We don't know. Yeah, I mean, he'd left his wine, so whether his head was overly filled with wine, we don't know. But certainly, when he saw Haman flopped all over Esther on the couch, there was no doubt then in his mind that Haman needed dealing with. And the interesting, maybe one of the many interesting things is that Haman was so upset that Mordecai originally wouldn't bow down to him, Mordecai the Jew, and Haman himself is say, and also we know very little about the king, don't we? He really is quite mysterious. You know, this sort of figure that nobody can approach. And even when somebody like Haman does approach and we have this terrible plan in his that he agrees with, he's a strange character, this king, that seems to be quite light-brained. He's not looking at all the connivings that go on around him. It's like he's above it all and just, you know, gets pushed from pillar to post until finally the penny drops with a loud clang of what's going on with Haman and his wife.
Yep. Thanks, thanks. I nearly called you Esther. Leslie, David, and then Mandy.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's just me, but the sound keeps wavering up and down.
Yeah.
Is it my system or is it everybody else's?
No,
system?
it's mine
Yes.
as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's all happening. I think microphones, it's staying close to your microphone will make it louder and more clear. But I'm not sure why it's wavering like that on Zoom. I've had a number of calls like that.
Okay,
Yeah, go for it, David.
Just a quick one then. I'm just fascinated by this guy Harbona, who is named here, and he jumps in very quickly and says, "Look, the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house." It's sort of, I should think the people at the palace could see the arrogance and the nature of this Haman guy, and it just reminds me. I think is it Proverbs 29, something like that, where it says, "When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice, but when the wicked bears rule, the people mourn." And although they won't say anything whilst that guy's in charge, Haman, once he's fallen, they sort of pounce on him and make sure that he's thoroughly done away with. That's all I was going to say.
Yep. Okay, thanks, David. Mandy?
Yeah, just following on a little bit from what Leslie was saying about the king being a little bit of a mystery. It just brought to mind about being tossed around on every wind of doctrine, because the one thing that is clear about the king is that he's not particularly anchored in anything else other than his wine, is he? I mean, he likes his feasting and he likes people around him who can tell him what to do, but there's nothing that suggests that he has particularly a mind of his own and that he's anchored in anything particular. And I think this particular instance shows that Esther is grounded. She is anchored in something, and she not only has her beliefs, she has a whole people behind her, and even the palace, like Hegai earlier on and Hebrona now, they're behind her because she's got something, and she's got God to trust in. And it's only when the king suddenly realizes that his wife is not just a pretty face, but actually she's quite a strategist too, that I think it looks like it's, he realizes that he has someone with him who can help anchor him, and he finally starts making some good decisions, or better decisions, because he's got someone by his side. And it's taken all this time for him to kind of realise that Esther is actually by his side and with him, not just on a personal relationship level, but actually she's very astute and knows what's going on in the kingdom too. And it does make you wonder how things would have changed in the leadership of the kingdom after this, because even if he thought that Esther hadn't come up with this on her own, and we later see where Mordecai ends up, but he knows that she's got some decent advisors around her too. And I think there's a lot here about what are you anchored in, who do you trust, where does your faith lie, because that is what's going to help you make the right and wise and discerning decisions in life, rather than being tossed around on every wind of doctrine.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. And we've got Carolyn next. So go for it, Carolyn.
I think David was before me.
No, I didn't. I didn't pull my phone down. It's all right. You go.
All right, okay. Well, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay.
Focusing on what you've been saying. I'll come back.
Okay, thanks, Carolyn. But your question on what the king went in the garden for was very interesting as well. So, but I think also being around political people, I've read some books on Churchill. I've read some biographies, not his complete series on what happened, which I'd like to do at some time when I've got several months with nothing to do. but it's sort of like he changed parties fairly frequently. In actual fact, he made decisions in the moment very often that were quite down. If you looked at his political trail, he makes decisions that almost seem to contradict each other on the way through. And you sort of realize that actually a lot of leaders are like that, where those decisions are, and I think that's what I see in this king. He makes decisions. He hasn't got a. When we had Blair come to power, there was a whole strategy behind that. They were going for education, and a couple of other areas were key targets for them. They went for them, and whatever they said, if they're talking about something else, they'd pull it round to education. They'd pull it back to this. Even if they were talking about defence or anything, they'd pull it back. There was a whole strategy they had that they worked and played. I've read some of Alistair Campbell's stuff on it. But actually, you sort of think there was a strategy and everyone knew how to do that. This king doesn't have that. He's like shooting from the hip a lot of the time. He's got advisors to try and put some of that general principles in play, and they meant to protect him, but he's very much making decisions a little bit when he hasn't got his advisors around. He's making those decisions very much on the hoof, or in those settings, and I think that's just the scale of the empire that he's running. I think is part of that decision making process. Whereas we've got journalists that hold people to account and say, you made a decision there to buy a car that guzzles petrol like anything, and now you're saying we all need electric cars. Which is right? That there's always those questions being asked. The king hasn't got people asking those questions. It's a dictatorship. It's a very different system. But I think looking at this situation with Haman, I think that the eunuch speaking up here, he really does him in. It's like Jonathan when he was taking on the Philistines. It's Jonathan knocked them down. His armor bearer finished them off, And you find that when he put the whole Philistine army to flight, Jonathan was just knocking people down all over the place. His armor bearer was going finishing people off. It's a bit unpleasant this early on a Monday morning, but I think this guy finishes Haman off. Not only is he sprawled all over your wife, begging for mercy on the couch, but also he the guy you honoured the other week, he's done special gallows for him. He's gone to town. The guy you wanted to honour, who saved your life, he's built the tallest gallows for that guy. If there was any room left for Haman to wriggle out, that guy finished it off totally. Permission to speak my mind, sir. Boom. Carolyn?
I was just thinking also that Harbona, the chap, I personally think that's what's been going around in a lot of their minds, because these people that they're going to annihilate, they've got to do it by their own neighbours. So these people have been in with their community, part of their lives, and for a long time. So it's very going against the human, nature to want to just suddenly go, okay, all these people, you now have to kill them, because there was no putting them down, like for instance, segregating them, putting them into a different society, like a bit like the passports they're doing now in America for persons. If you've got a vaccine or something, you sort of like, they're going to sack them and give them passports and second class. And it's the same with the Jews, and it takes time to segregate them to make people feel that they deserve to be killed. And I don't think that he done it so quickly, Haman, in his evilness, that I think that when that unit got the chance to get rid of the person that's dealing with all this confusion, I think that he's probably relieved to do that. I reckon. I don't reckon he was probably liked a lot at all. I don't think he was liked. I don't think he would have ingratiated himself with the eunuchs or anything. Doesn't seem like it. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah.
That's my understanding of it anyway.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I think people who are in a high position who don't take care of the people around them, it's not, who walk all over people to get to the top, and then pay no regard. I think it's the people who care for people that, there's a lot of, you hear folks like Napoleon and folks like that had high regard from his soldiers because of how he treated them when they're under hardship and so on. There was a lot of camaraderie and things like that. So I think that's what you're saying there, Carolyn, is he didn't have any regard for that, so no one would really want to protect him. So thanks for that. Mandy?
I think some of the eunuchs would probably have some sympathy as well, and understanding of what it's like to have your people annihilated as well, because although they weren't annihilated in killing them, the king, by making them eunuch, ended their bloodline. They were the last of their generation, and to most of the world at that time, it was important to have your bloodline carry on after you, your name to carry on after you. And to be a eunuch slave was probably the most lowest place a slave owner could put you. I read some stuff on chattel slavery a little while ago, and the Arabs were just as prolific at black chattel slavery as the trade triangle with Europe and America. But what the Arabs did was made them all eunuchs. So there's now no evidence that they had chattel slavery in the Arab countries from the black people from Africa. They were annihilated because of that. And I think for this eunuch here, you know, he would be thinking, well, I know what it's like to have my bloodline completely ended. And it's not a nice place to be. It's the lowest of the low. It is horrendous. And I work for the king. That's who I work for. He is my master. And I'm in the palace surrounded by all this opulence, but with no power whatsoever, because the bloodline was going to be ended. And that was what it was going to be for the whole of the Jewish people. So I can understand very much why the eunuchs in the palace would be behind Esther, because they would see the importance for her and her people to keep that bloodline going on.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mandy. So we've hit the magic time of 10 o'clock. We've gone over a little bit, but I think the story is unfolding wonderfully. We've got suddenly Haman is no more. This big opposition, and I think the next stage you're about to move into the next few chapters is, you know, what happens next. And actually, it's one thing to win a battle like that against someone who comes against you. It's another battle to follow on from that and lead forward. And I think the character that's been shown so far, we're about to see how that follows through. We'll leave it there for today, but thank you all for your wonderful comments. Thanks for the wonderful discussion. I'm still pondering the king wandering into the garden and coming back again. I wonder, was he coming to do Haman in, and Haman's position just confirmed that, or not? You just sort of think we don't really know, and I think that's the wonderful thing. There's lots of mystery in this still. As you go through it. So thanks for that. Thanks for all your wonderful comments. We've been in some very interesting territory with it all. But that sense of character, and character grows slowly. It's not something that's an instant. Suddenly someone has character. It's something that grows over time. And Esther certainly shows that that's probably a whole lifetime of building character that builds up to this moment. So thank you all, and I'll move us offline. And there we go.